Good evening, everyone. Good evening. How are we doing? Settle down a little bit. I feel like we can go ahead and get started. This is, I guess, something that's been coming up for a good long while. It's been a couple of years since I went, but it was an interesting experience to know that I was being deployed. Plus, I had over a year to know that I was being deployed and get ready. Elise asked me to do this to show you what my experiences were with basically God sightings on this whole trip. It first started before I left. Can you hear very well? Is that better? Before I left, I was trying to figure out how I was going to have my practice covered. I work around Greenwood. It's a wonderful community. We have amazing people in our dental community as well. One sitting right here. But I would say about a week before I left, I still did not have my practice covered. For 3 months. That was pretty terrifying. And then all of a sudden, basically one day, the entire trip was covered. From dental community covered, my practice, to make sure that they kept it going. That was the first thing. Obviously, it's very hard to leave your family. I know we've had people that have done this in our community, in our congregation. So it's not new to a lot of people, but it's still not. One of the biggest things that I had so much support from this church. This was a picture of the kids and Kyle laying hands on me right before I left. You could just feel God's presence with this. Before we left, my family went to Greenwood. That's where I flew out of to begin with. And we went to Top Golf as a little family outing. And that's a fun place to go if you've never been. But the staff there found out that I was being deployed. And so when you look on the far left, they made this dessert for me. They brought it to me to say thank you for going. The middle picture right here was my plane. And when you look over, what you see is this rainbow appeared over my plane. Right there, I knew everything was going to be fine. That's a pretty clear sign to me that God was in control. And of course, then that was me taking a nap once I got there. It goes as a little trip. My friends were glad enough to do pictures like that. A lot of what you'll see too is just some of the landscape, some of the area. So it's desert. But when we flew in, you saw the Persian Gulf, you saw all the oil refineries, and then you see this New York City in the middle of nowhere. That's what Kuwait City was like. It was high rises, it was money. The cars that were there were either Porsche, Mercedes, BMW, or Land Rover. And there was basically nothing else. So it was a very rich country. But then once you left that city, this is what you saw. And then they have this nice sign. I don't know how well you can see that, but it says, "Welcome to Ali Al-Salama Air Base." And that's where I was. Part of what really the whole thing that I was there to do was to serve. Primarily was to serve for the military. I was only minister there for 3 bases. And then when COVID hit while we were there, we had other opportunities to serve. We had to go through and do temperature checks at all the security points. We had to educate the security forces on what to do. I was part of the planning team for the entire wing that developed all the processes for COVID. And we all were learning at that point, so we really didn't know what to do. We had to do it each day as we went along. But it wasn't just serving in the military, it was serving other people too. This was a little funny aside. When I got there, somebody was watching TV, and this was a scene that popped up. I recognize this man. Stranger Heights. So Greenwood is everywhere, even in Kuwait. But yeah, that was one of the TV shows that somebody was watching, and did you know about anything? Yes, we did. But this is what our base was like. It was very wide open. It was a very large base. Basically, where we were was the entry point for people to depart to wherever they go east. So it was a very large air base. And wherever you look, you could see the heat around. But when I got there, it was wintertime. And at night, it got down to the mid-30s, which was amazing. And it would get right back up to the 90s. families during the day. And that was in January. By the time I left, it got up to about 120. But these kind of scenes I saw every day. God's presence was in the landscape, it was in the people. I was surrounded by such good people while I was there. And so many would say, how can you be so calm through all this? Because of what was going on with COVID, what was going on at home. And I said, because I have faith. I surrendered this once I left this town and went overseas. I surrendered everything to Him. And it made all the difference because I was able to enjoy my time while I was there. Because what else was I going to do? And so I was able to deal with people, knowing, again, that everything at home was going to be fine and everything was good. But this was kind of our, not mascot, but they called the base of the rock. And said this was built in some of these pictures were different times during the trip, but they all had wonderful backdrops. This was during one of the few sandstorms they hit. It's kind of hard to tell with this coloring, but everything looked orange, like a brown orange. And it looked like there's some kind of filter over a lens, but you walk outside and the lighting looked just like this. Again, that's one of the trips on the road, the heat kind of made the vision cloudy as well. And while we were there, too, we were able to leave the base just a couple of times. First, for security reasons, and then secondly, when COVID hit, Kuwait had a curfew where they had up to a $30,000 fine and jail time for breaking the curfew. So they took it very seriously. And while I was there, they only had a few more than 100 cases of COVID in the entire country. But these are some of the scenes that you would see, and the camels would just be wandering all around. And what was kind of sad, if a camel died, they would just leave it on the side of the road. Because nobody's going to be able to carry around a dead camel to bury it. But every once in a while you would see a shepherd out with the camels too. And these are some of the scenes around the base as well. This was one of the main bases that Saddam Hussein came in and took over back when it first started. And they didn't change anything. The bunkers were still collapsed. All the holes in the buildings, they didn't improve anything. They left it to me as a reminder. This just happened to be one of the times I was walking at night and caught an electrical storm. So that was lightning flashing. And again, just a ton of glimpses of what God can do. This picture was not one of my mother's favorites because I was wearing an armored vest, but I wore that to work out in. Just to walk around the base. Every night I would walk about an hour and a half just to decompress, to get some thoughts, get good exercise, and it was a great way to end the night. But we wore this not because of COVID, but because of the sand blowing in your face. And I had to give a little shout out to Walter in that one as well. And this was just what the rooms were like at the beginning. I was lucky enough to get in a brand new hardened shelter as a dorm, so we had our own private bathroom in our room. Once COVID hit, they turned our dorm into an isolation wing, and they put us in a little portable. So we were really sad about that. And then this was basically a one-person room that they put two people in. So it was about half the size of this little alcove right here. This was how they transported the camels up, like a pickup truck. That was a high ride for them. One of the little outings where we were able to do when we did go into the city was to go see the zoo. And we drove about an hour and a half to the zoo, only for them to say it's closed. So we were able to get at least one picture of the peacocks. This is a fishing village. This is one of my favorite spots because it was in the city, but it was part of what agriculture was like. You could see what the people were like. So here's what it looks like from Kuwait City. You just see the high rises. These are the malls, and the malls were absolutely enormous. Some of the local cuisine. I did like the coffee. I'm a big coffee person, and they had very strong coffee, so that was nice. And they also had McDonald's. That was a happy meal that I got on the left just for nostalgia's sake. And I don't know how well you can see this, but this is also a cheesecake factory that was over there. So it was odd to have this kind of juxtaposition between the Western world and the Middle Eastern world. And they all were fluent English speaking with no accents there. Again, coffee. And while I was there, my birthday happened. And so the people that were there decided to do a cookout for me. They cooked ribs and smoked pork belly. And we called this on the right a Franken cake because we're only allowed to take one piece of cheesecake from the cafeteria, so they all each got a piece of cheesecake and made this one cake for me for my birthday. So that's why I say Franken cake. I don't know how many of y'all met Lang Foster. Lang Sr., this is Lang Jr. Lang is in my unit with me. He was the one that replaced me while I was over there. But it's been such a blessing to have somebody that I've known, that I grew up with. We went to Walker. We didn't go to the same time, but we both went to Wofford, both went to USC. And so to have that over the phone with me there was wonderful. And this was a dare. So this is a velvet smoking jacket that I have. And somebody said if I wore that in formation while I was over there, they'd give me a free steak dinner. And I had to give a presentation that day. It was Valentine's Day, so I thought, what better time to do that than there. And you can see my friend's expression in disbelief. So I've got that steak dinner in there. We have to have fun. And so we would take time, bingo nights, we had game nights, puzzle nights, even wore kilt for a 5K run for St. Patrick's Day. And when I said we all had to serve, because of COVID, the main contracting force was from the villages and the towns. Well, they weren't allowed to be on base. We couldn't move people in and out, so we had to build a city for them, or a tent city, to have the locals live there. But there were only so many, so we all had to take turns working. And I was able to work in the cafeteria, serving, and that was grueling work. To sit there for 4 hours straight and just load a plate and pass it down. So I was very thankful for that. We also had to learn how to do acupuncture on each other. Another fun little skill. This is kind of funny that this is a board game that was over there when COVID hit. And it was a very fitting game for us to play. And we did win. So that was a positive. And this was what my demo setup was like. So we had one chair. When I said I was only dentist for 3 bases, there was another large army base that was there that would take no referrals for difficult cases. When COVID hit, they stopped taking any referrals and they sent their people to us. So we were in essence 4 bases of patients. But it was a pretty modern setup, you can see. We had all the stuff that we needed there. We needed some things there that I didn't have here, so that was nice to be able to use that. And this is our large group. These are our money shots as the providers that were over there, so people knew who we were. And then they would switch and spin. And here's a shout out to our veterinary friend over here. When I said I was supported by Dennis, I was also supported by Adam. was at the conference and found a book on veterinary dentistry and gave to have just in case. We had military working dogs there, and they had a clinic go over to the kennels and learn how to treat the dogs in case they were injured as well. And they didn't have rails for the medical group. And so they were instructing us on what the main business were, those kind of things. And they asked if somebody would volunteer to put on a suit to be attacked by the dogs. So I thought, well, what else am I going to do that? Of course, I raised my hand. And it left a nice bruise through the suit too. And this was the picture that the base used for their Instagram post for the world of me running the dog. And then me falling. One night, too, I was sitting there, and again, God's presence. I just finished talking to Elise on the phone, and I looked in the chair. This is the chair that I was sitting in talking to her, and these two doves were sitting right there on the arm. Right after I got up, it's another little, that was, I think, a chinchilla on the left, too. That you would just see, it was amazing to see different wildlife there in a desert setting that I didn't think would be here. Representing your own state. This is a picture, too. Again, this was home. This was supposed to be a father-daughter dance, reconciliation. And Dawson stepped in for me. Aren't they precious? We had lots of international militaries as well. There's a large Italian camp, a large Canadian camp, a British, but the Italians were very generous. They brought their own pizza chef. They had a brick-oven pizza, a room where he made his own dough and pizza, so he invited us over there. And then they had a coffee tent. Going back to the coffee, and they had a great espresso. But they were a lot of fun, and seeing the family atmosphere again, they just had one big table, and everybody sat and passed plates around. And you didn't understand anything they were saying because they were all speaking Italian. But you could tell it was just a big family atmosphere. And then to have that feeling was wonderful as well. That was the same day of the singing storm. These are just some of the pictures that I'll get from home as well. And I think a lot of people saw the fat head that at least is everywhere. Especially like the fat head picture on the top right. That's the video call that we did. So I'll take the call. I was even able to watch our church services. I have an iPad. This is underneath the top bunk of my bed. And so I could sit there and watch the services. His algebra bed was an 8-hour difference. And so we were 8 hours ahead. But just to have that little bit of home meant the world as well. I thought this was fitting. It was Palm Sunday. So I had to take a picture of the palm. And then this was my communion. We had no alcohol over there, and so my wine was cranberry juice. But we did have church services every Sunday too, and that was another way for me to feel home and feel God's presence because to be able to worship in an area where it's hard to really means a lot. And also to worship with your friends is a big thing. This was the last night I was there. I was out going one of our walks, and the sun was getting lower and lower, and I was able to sit on a rock and watch the sunset gradually get lower and lower. And it was, as strange as it sounds, it was hard to leave. I said, it's almost like survivor's guilt. I was going to leave before everybody else. And knowing that they're going to be extended, and that was one of the problems too, was COVID hit. The secretary of defense knew that So I knew I was going to be there until September. And so I told my family that. And so every day they would check. And every day it hadn't changed. And finally one day she said he's going home. And the mix of emotions was amazing. But to know that I've developed such good relationships, good friendships with the people over there, we still talk every week. That's been 2 years ago. But this was a great way for me to just sit and feel God's presence as I was sunset. And then this was the final scene, where it says goodbye. I was all the way home. And that was it. It's hard to think that you can see God's presence in just little things like this, especially in a time where you don't know what's going to happen. We had times where we had missile attacks, which I think covered. The missiles never came to us, but you only had 90 seconds to figure out what was going to happen. And even with that, I never felt endangered. I never felt scared while I was there, because I knew everything was fine. And so I felt his peace and his presence the entire trip I was there. And so I was very thankful to be home once I was here too. So with that being said, does anyone have any questions?
You have to put up the burn pit while you're on there.
We had no burn pits while I was there. It was relatively calm, and that was one positive about COVID, was that there wasn't a lot going on anywhere. The threats that were happening were not near us. It was internal things usually in Syria. Yeah, I was on call 24/7. There were times I would get called at midnight, 3 in the morning. It was most of the foreign military. Yeah, we have pretty good history here. I would like to think so. And so I would say a large portion of what we did were on the foreign military. And usually extractions or everything else. Our base, anywhere from 4,000 to 12,000 people were there. Because some people were having to come here to our base, but then couldn't leave. So they were stuck on the base, and the people that had come in couldn't transfer out where they're supposed to go, so everybody had to stay there. We would have to create a whole quarantine village for people that were coming in finally. And they had to quarantine for 2 weeks. And that involved having bathrooms, having washrooms, having electricity, having internet. So that was an interesting thing to do too. But for the most part, you could tell with different nationalities, when you saw what was on the schedule, it was going to be a recount or destruction.
Did it ever rain?
It did rain a couple of times, which was weird, because it was still sunny. But it was just those big fat drops that would hit, and then disappear immediately. So that was usually one of those things where you don't really realize it's happening. One thing I was so thankful for too with the church support was the meals that were provided for our family. Did you guys cook at all? I was gone. And DoorDash started one running, I don't think at that point was because of it. We had friends that would come over and cut our grass for us. And we were so blessed. I was blessed, my family was blessed with just everything that happened while I was gone. Yes, at least had to see Josh for something.
Presbyterian said when you were temporary airfield and the permit still there, what's the status of it?
The status while I was there, it was still somewhat temporary, and people that were there, the longest rotation was a year. And those were typically the ones that were coming in. My rotation was supposed to be a 6-month time frame, and I was able to split it with Lane Foster, who I did 3 3, which was very nice to be able to do that. What they were talking about, at least while I was there, was creating it as a full-time station for people that their families come to Kuwait as well. So they get that base that we permanently occupy. I don't know if that's changed since I went, but that was one of the plans. At least reminded me of one other thing too. That was a nice little God wink. When I got there, they give you a tour of everything, including your supplies. And Dennis that was there before me showed me our little supply area, and we had 50 to 100 cases of masks for some reason in our supply. And he said, I have no idea why we have this many masks. Somebody made a mistake ordering these, but we have them, here they are. This was a month before COVID. So I felt like I wasn't the guy with every COVID said, anybody. Because they're all calling us to get masks, so we had to ration them. But yeah, we had a whole closet full of masks.
Aside from missing your family, what was the most trying part?
There really wasn't. And that was part of this whole thing, was I felt such peace being there. And to me, that was a great way to be able to serve because I wasn't worried. I was able to be there, do my job, and to just be there for other people. And again, I was surrounded, without a doubt, by God, with people that were all Christian. They were all good people. Well, there were a couple of Mormons, it'll be on that. And that was one funny thing too, was as far as when they did the ribs, he was eating these ribs for my birthday. He said, this is really good. This rub is wonderful. What's in it? So all these spices, I want to use espresso powder. And Mormons can't have caffeine. So he had to put his plate away. And his whole demeanor just sunk. That's what's so bad for him. Until I ate his ribs. But that was wonderful to be able to just be there and not have any worries. Still was easy to miss the family, but that was no worry. Cards? That was something almost every week, every day. And that was, I don't know how many of you have been in a situation where you wait on the mail person. We had one person that would go pick up the mail and then bring the cart by. And all I can think of was like a TV show, and you see the cart come by, and you start to look, and then pass you a package or a card. One of my favorites was I was sitting there in the office one day, and all of a sudden I get a call from Daily Post. Just to call and check in on me. And things like that were just awesome. That's the best word. But yeah, I had just drawers full of cards, and I kept every one of them. Still look at them every once in a while. Well, thank y'all for letting me talk about this.
I wanted to share that while he was gone, I kept a list of all the things that could go wrong that did, but I was trying to be positive, so I called them distractions 2020. And I kept them on my phone. And there were things like our dog got pancreatitis, was not doing well. And we've lived in that house how many years? And we got mice while he left. And the washing machine flooded the entire kitchen twice. And I had to have 2 wisdom teeth taken out. And I also had to see Josh for something else. And I also chipped another tooth. Wow. Apparently. And then the kitchen floor started bubbling up. And I called the kids out when it flooded, and we had every towel in the house on that floor sopping up water. I had a broom sweeping it out the door, and there were so many wet towels, I had to hang them on the fence. It was really pretty because it was very colorful. And the funniest thing was through all that, I felt fine. I felt fine. And I think that was because of the prayers of this church and the people, because I think the same as you, we both felt fine. We felt peaceful. And then as soon as it got back, I started to get stressed again. So apparently I'll stop praying. But anyway, this church supported us really well during that time. And Christopher didn't tell you this, you probably already knew this, but when did you get to come home?
I arrived in the country on our anniversary, 20th anniversary. And one picture that we did on here, Dawson graduated the next day. So I got home and then he graduated the next day, so I was able to get to his high school graduation. Got home on Lily's birthday. So all these things happened, but the funny thing was, we're supposed to all be masked up. I was actually supposed to be quarantined. And the first picture that District 50 posted for graduation was a picture of me and Lee walking in together without masks on. But we were getting them out of our pocket to put them on, so that helps. But yeah, I was thankful to be able to be here for Lily's birthday, graduation. I thought that was a decent anniversary present to be home. I'll give you something. But yeah, that was